Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Better Together Facebook Live. My name is Barb Roose, and I am your host. And this Better Together Facebook Live is a place where we talk about all of the things: our hopes, our dreams, our worries, and even our waistlines. And it doesn't matter where you come from or what you've been through. Here on the Better Together Facebook Live broadcast, we find the hope, the help, as well as the practical next steps that we need so that we can all get better together. And today we're talking about the pandemic, y'all, because we're still in the middle of a whole pandemic. So if you are watching for the very first time, I'm so glad that you're here. I don't know if someone invited you to join the broadcast, or if you are a normal viewer of the Better Together Facebook Live. I'm happy that you're with us. This is an interactive broadcast. I began doing this Better Together Facebook Live during the pandemic, and it's been a few months, and what I realized was that connecting helps us all. So throughout tonight's episode, I'm going to ask questions, and you're going to get a chance to give input. And I want to share with you 5 promises of God that are true, whether we're in a pandemic or not. And this episode came up over the weekend when I was really dragging because of the pandemic. Back in May, I wrote a blog post titled Pandemic Fatigue. And when I wrote the blog post, I just was reflecting on that low energy feeling, how hard it was to trudge through the day. And I realized that there were a lot of people that felt that way. Well, that was May, and now it is nearing mid-August, and we're still in the pandemic. And it doesn't matter how much you love Jesus, the pandemic is hard. So tonight, I want to share with you those promises, but we're also going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to play Would You Rather, the quarantine edition. And then I'm going to share these 5 verses, as well as 5 things that you can remember about who God is that will ground you. This episode of the Better Together Facebook Live was inspired by a quote that I want to share with you. And when I share this quote, I would love for you to just say hi in the comments. Just say hi, tell me your name, and so that I can I can say hi to you back. If you've done the broadcast before, you know that I love putting comments on the screen. But this is the quote that inspired today's topic. And it's from Corrie ten Boom, who was a World War II concentration camp survivor. She said, "If you look at the world, you'll be distressed." Isn't that true? If you look within, you'll be depressed. But if you look at God, you'll be at rest. Isn't that such a powerful quote? And I was thinking about our pandemic fatigue, which by definition, pandemic fatigue is when we exhaust ourselves mentally and emotionally from constantly spinning on uncertainty. That's where a lot of us are at right now. It's hard for us to make good decisions about the present or the future because we just don't know what will happen in the future. And pandemic fatigue is when we wear ourselves out by constantly spinning on the what ifs and trying to navigate, are we safe and are we okay? And so when I thought about that quote, that when we look at the world, we'll be distressed, when we're fixed on our present circumstances and what's going on, yes, we're very distressed. And if that's you today, I'm so glad you're here. Hang in there with me. Don't scroll past this episode because I'm going to share some hope with you. And if you look within, she said that'll make you depressed, because in and of ourselves, we don't have the answers for what we're struggling with. But here is the gold and the beauty of it. She says, but if you look at God, you'll be at rest. So tonight's episode, the 5 promises that I'm going to share with you, these are promises that have to do with who God is. And so I want to say hi to Mary Dolan. She is watching us live on YouTube right now. Mary, thank you so much. You are always such an encouragement to me and leaving comments. When I was going through a tough time this weekend, part of what I realized was that I had been fixed and focused on my circumstances. And here is the thing. There's nothing really wrong in my world. I mean, I got problems, but I also have a lot of great things that are happening in my life. So if your world is going along pretty well and you still don't understand why you're dragging, it's because the pandemic, it does wear us down mentally and emotionally. And then for others of you, if you're dealing with health problems and financial issues and relationship struggles, the pandemic on top of everything is about ready to tip you over the edge. And you're trying to figure out the solutions. I'm glad you're here as well, because I believe what I have to share with you today, it's going to take your focus off of what's happening around you and what's happening within you and place your focus back on God, where you're going to find hope. So before we get into those things, I'm hoping that you will stop and have a little bit of fun with me, because I would love for us to play what I am calling Would You Rather. It is the quarantine edition. And these are just some would you rather questions that you can drop in the comments, and we'll have some fun. So the very first would you rather question in the quarantine edition is, would you rather be out of toilet paper or toothpaste? Which one? Write that in the comments. Would you rather be out of toilet paper or toothpaste? Now, for me, I think that this question would be a lot different if we were earlier in the pandemic, when we were all trying to find some toilet paper. In fact, I actually didn't have to hustle for toilet paper. About a month before the pandemic, my brilliant Aunt Renee, she must have received a word from the Lord somehow, some way, but she came to visit on March 2nd. That was the weekend of her birthday. And I usually do my aunt's hair every 6 weeks. And she brought with her 2 12-packs of toilet paper on March 2nd. And I just threw them up in the closet. One I was going to give to my daughter. I had no idea what a quarantine meant. It was mainly whispers. But now when I think about things, I don't want to run out of toothpaste. Like toilet paper, we can get creative and come up with some other ways to do toilet paper. Some of you, let's see, Barb, she agreed with me. She doesn't want to run out of toothpaste. Neither does Michelle. Thank you. Oh, wow. We're running the deck here. Brenda said she doesn't want to run out of toothpaste. I love it. Becky, look, we're on the toothpaste brigade. Letitia, yes, she said, and she would hope she had baking soda in the pantry. That's right. Nice job, ladies. You guys get the game. So question number 2, and this one's a little bit gross, but it's the Would You Rather quarantine edition. Here's the question. Would you rather lick a public restroom toilet seat or play tag with a friend with the coronavirus? Now, this one, I don't even know how I would begin to answer this one. This one was actually made up by some youth pastors. So if you don't like the question, I didn't make it up. But would you rather lick a public restroom toilet seat? I can't even get that out without wanting to gag. Or play tag with someone with the coronavirus? Honestly, I'm going to take my chances on playing tag with a friend with the coronavirus, but I'm going to pick a really fast friend to make sure that I can't actually catch them. So that's going to be my answer. How about all of you? Which one would you do? Right now, there are no comments. I feel like this is a question that many of you have just decided that is just absolutely awful. Let's see, who else do we have out there? Let's see. Michelle said she would play tag. Yep. Barb said tag. Letitia, yes. You know what? We're all on the same wavelength. All right, let's do one more. So this is the coronavirus edition. Actually, we've got a few more. Stephanie, hi, Stephanie. She said tag as well. And Becky, yes, I agree. All right, so last question. This is the would you rather for the coronavirus. Would you rather live off of only canned meat, not canned mean, canned meat or canned vegetables? Would you rather live off of only canned meat or canned vegetables? This is your last question there. Go ahead and chime in, the coronavirus edition, and then we'll go ahead and get to those 5 promises. For me, I think I'm going to go off of canned vegetables. And I think it's mainly because a previous guest on the Better Together Facebook Live, my friend Lisa Lewis, she talked about how there are many canned vegetables that are actually, by the time we cook veggies, those canned vegetables actually retain nutrients better than some of us, the way we cook out our veggies. And so let's see, Becky, she agreed, canned vegetables. Now I have a weird relationship with meat. Like I like meat, but it like not all the time. So let's see who else. Barb said vegetables. Alexa said vegetables. Thank you, Alexa. We're running it. Vegetables, so canned vegetables. Michelle and Stephanie said canned veggies. You know, we are all like, you guys, we're all on the same wavelength. I love that about us. So thank you for having fun with me while we play the coronavirus edition. But right now, I want to transition because in this pandemic season, there have been a lot of things that we haven't been able to laugh about. And what I hope is when I share these 5 promises from God, that you will be encouraged, that your heart will be uplifted. And if you're just joining us this evening, tonight's episode was inspired by a quote from Corrie ten Boom. She is an author. She survived the World War II concentration camp. And this quote says, if you look at the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. If you look at God, you'll be at rest. And so this quote inspired tonight's episode because for me, I was looking at a lot of things that were happening around me that were really weighing down my heart. And then I was thinking inside about all of the problems and all of the opportunities, good things and difficult things I was trying to manage. And it was really weighing me down this weekend. But I love that last line. She said, if you look at God, you'll be at rest. And so I'm getting ready to share the 5 ways, the 5 things that we need to remember and focus on when it comes to God. And so the very first thing, and I'm going to put them up on the screen, and then the verses will go in the comments. But the very first thing I want you to remember right now, and if you want to just take a deep breath and soak this in. And number 1, the promise of God is that you can't mess up God's love for you. And I wanted to start here because often in our circumstances, we believe that our circumstances are a reflection of God's love for us. We believe that how our life, how smooth or how bumpy, how our past is or our future, we believe that's God's judgment, and that's not true. There is a verse that I want to share with you from Jeremiah 31:3. And it said, this is God speaking to a group of people at a time when they had made all kinds of bad decisions and they were in a very difficult place in life. And this is what God speaks to them. He says, I have loved you, my people, with an everlasting love. Not a short-term love, not a love based on how they're behaving. He says, with unfailing love, I have drawn you to myself. And I want to share that verse with you right now because Some of you in this pandemic season are questioning whether or not God loves you. You've been praying and things haven't been working out as planned. You've been making plans and all of your plans have been falling apart. Some of you haven't prayed in a long time because you're kind of mad at God. Perhaps the pandemic, you've been depressed and haven't felt like reading your Bible or even watching church online. But you can't mess up God's love for you. God loves you because of who he is. That's it. It's not because of anything that you have done or anything that you compel God to do for you. There's another verse where another pastor says that God is love. And I want you to embrace that for yourself. Don't look at your circumstances and determine whether or not God loves you. God loves you because of who he is, and you can't mess that up, no matter how much you've struggled during this pandemic to step out in faith or just to trust God. And so that's number one. Number two is that God can carry your pain and problems better than you can. Right now, we all have a long list of things in our lives that we wish we could fix. We wish that we could do differently. We wish that we could solve. And everything that we're trying to figure out, we're carrying it around. And much of what we're carrying around is starting to feel really heavy. The verse that I want to share with you is 1 Peter 5:7. And this is a pastor writing to a group of people like us. And he says, give all of your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. God cares about you right now. I know that your eyes have been focused on what you've been trying to fix or figure out for the last couple of months. And God, he wants you to not just throw your hands up in the air and run away from your obligations, but for the matters that you have no control over, you don't have to give up. You don't have to just throw your hands up in the air and say, I don't want to deal with that. That's not it. And you don't have to give in. You don't have to just start just throwing caution to the wind and making irresponsible decisions. But there is a third option, and that's letting go, or what I like to call surrender. And surrender, here is this white flag here. Surrender isn't a sign of failure, but in military terms, surrender is actually a way to sustain life. When the losing side knows that they may end up all getting killed, they negotiate for surrender. And for us, God, he wants us to surrender what is crushing us. He wants us to surrender what we can't handle. He wants us to surrender what we can't change because he cares about us. And he knows that as long as we're holding on to everything that is messing us up and keeping us stuck and slowing us down, he knows that that's not good for you and I. And so today I want to challenge you to think about what is it that you need to let go of, because God cares about you. He isn't going to call you a wimp. He is not going to degrade you or demean you for saying, God, I can't, but you can, and I will let you. So that's number two. Number three is God promises to give you strength and peace. Did you know that this is a promise of God? This is something that you can count on God for, that he will give you strength and peace. And this comes from the psalmist. And the psalmist said, let me pull that one up. There we go. The Lord gives his people strength. The Lord blesses them with peace. When you wake up in the morning, or even right now, you can say, God, I don't have it to get through the day. I have prayed that prayer, my friends, so many times. God, I don't have it to get through the day. I don't even have it to get through the morning. Please give me your strength, God, and I need your peace. You can ask God for that each day. You can ask him for it each hour. You know what? There ain't nothing that says you can't ask him for it every minute, because we don't have it. Our strength runs out. We're human, and this pandemic is draining us. And so if God promises to give you strength and bless you with peace, ask him for it. He'll give it to you. And then number 4, I hope that you are enjoying these, because these right now, these are helping me, my friends. So number 4, let me take that verse away. Number 4 is God will not fail you. We've talked about how God, he loves you, that you can't mess up his love for you, that he is going to carry all of your burdens. But there's this fear in our mind that God isn't going to come through for us when we need him. And one of my very favorite stories in the Bible is in the first chapter of the book of Joshua. The Israelites had been enslaved for 400 years, and God sent a man named Moses to free them. And after 40 years in the wilderness, kind of like what we're going through now, God gives the leadership of the Israelites to a man named Joshua. And in that very first chapter, Joshua is standing on the edge of the Jordan River. And I am pretty sure in that moment that he felt a lot like we do, where he's like, okay, we're in this new place. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to get all of this done. And this is what God says to Joshua. I put this verse in the comments. This is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. God says, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. For I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. And even though God spoke those words to Joshua, when you read through the Bible, there are so many verses where God talks about how he is always present with us and how he is going to provide what you need when you need it. The difficulty is that we have expectations beyond what we need, because that's a very American thing to do. But God is not going to fail you. And I don't know what it is that you are looking at or looking for. But when you keep your eyes on God and who he is, and remember that he loves you, that you can't mess up his love for you, that he wants to carry your worries, he is not going to fail you. You can trust him on that. And then let me go to the last, number 5. Number 5 is that God isn't out to get you. He is out to give you his best. We don't know when this pandemic is going to end, but one of the things that I have to keep in mind is that there can be purpose in every season of life, that I can choose to decide what my attitude is going to be. Am I going to get better, or am I going to get bitter based on what's in front of me? So I want to remember that God isn't out to get me. This pandemic isn't because God is trying to make my life miserable. There's been a lot of things in my life that have changed. As a speaker, I usually do about 30 to 35 speaking events a year. Well, since the beginning of the year, I think I've done 5 or 6, and this is my livelihood. And yet God is taking care of me. I don't know what the future looks like. For those of you who know my story, I've had some other radical changes that have happened in my life. But when I remember who God is, that he loves me, that I can't mess up his love for me, that he wants to take care of my burdens, that he's not out to get me, that allows me in these hard times to stop and say, okay, well, how does God want to bless me in this season of life? What is it that I can learn from who he is? This is a verse that many of you know. And this is a great way for us to kind of wrap up this episode. And you can read this verse with me. I think that it might be encouraging to you. So read it along with me. God says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans for peace, not evil, to give you a future and a hope." Never forget that. This is actually from the Voice translation. And I chose it because of that end line. Never forget that. God is not out to get you, my friend. I don't know what it is that you're facing, but he is out to give you his best. And how do you get God's best? By keeping your focus on him. And so there is a practical way that I want to share with you that you can begin to do this. And you may have seen me do this earlier in the pandemic. But this is a jar that I started keeping back in early June. And what I thought through was, this is such an extraordinary season of life. I want to keep track of how God blesses me each day and shows his faithfulness to me each day. So this is my gratitude jar. It sits on my kitchen table, and I have all these little pieces of paper that I pre-cut up. And all summer long since June, each day or every other day, I write down something that I see that God has done that I'm grateful for. And I recognize that it's something that God has done. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm grateful for, but I want to keep a record of the places where God has been at work in my life. And I want to do this because I want to be able to see what God is teaching me, how I can see him more. At the end of this summer, I'm going to take this jar, and I have this beautiful box here. Look how beautiful it is. It says, happiness looks gorgeous on you. And I am going to create a time capsule. So inside of this box is all this super fun paper. And I'm going to put this jar inside of this box like this. And then I will put it in a closet so that in a year or two, I'm going to open this up and it's going to be like a time capsule. But for right now, the value to me in this pandemic is that every day when I sit down and I write down something that I've seen God do in my life, it keeps the focus off of what's happening in the world around me. It keeps the focus off of what's happening inside of me. And it helps me focus on God so that I can have peace and hope. So I want to encourage you to do this. I got this jar from the dollar store. You see that it was $3. And I got this box from the dollar store as well. It was only $5. You can do this as a family. You can do this if you're single. You can do this if you're a couple. But this is a fantastic way to keep your eyes on God. So those are the 5 things. If you would, I would love for you to tell me which of the promises are most helpful. So number 1 was, you can't mess up God's love for you. Number 2 is, God can carry your pain and problems better than you can. Number 3, God promises to give you strength and peace. Number 4, God will not fail you. And number 5, God isn't out to get you. He's out to give you his best. So you can drop in the comments which one was most helpful for you. I would love to hear that. And for those of you who follow me on social media, some of you have watched all of the episodes. If you love this episode, share it with your friends, or you can watch previous episodes at barbroose.com. On the blog page, you can check out all of the episodes. And then finally, I'm excited because I want to share with you. We're going to pray in the minute to wrap things up, but I want to share with you, I've got a new book that's coming out in just less than a month, and it's titled Surrendered: 40 Days to Help You Let Go and Live Like Jesus. And this is a new little devotional book. If you have been struggling with the pandemic, struggling with loss of control, struggling with just fear and worry, These short devotions will equip you in 5 minutes per day. They will encourage you. They will uplift you. If you read this at the beginning of the day, this will take the focus off of the world and your problems and help you focus on God. So you can order. There's a website there. I also have a private teaching Facebook group. If you want to jump in and be a part of that group, I would love to have you do that. I'll drop that in the comments, and you can check out being a part of that group. For tonight, I am so grateful that you said yes to joining me and being encouraged by those 5 promises of God. Michelle, thank you for saying, Michelle said that strength and peace were helpful for her. So you can go ahead and leave your comments. I am grateful that you stopped by to join me this evening. And please join me every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the fresh episode of the Better Together Facebook Live. This is a broadcast that I absolutely love doing, and I would love it if you would share with your friends. So thanks for joining me this evening. Leave me some comments down below. Let me know how this episode was a blessing to you, and I will see you next week, friends. Good night.
We're better together.